Thanksgiving, my sister found out I had $12 million, and my family insisted I give it to her because they believed she deserved it more. Hello everyone. Before today's video begins, I need a quick favor. We've noticed the channel slowing down a bit, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's fast, free, and helps us keep producing strong content. Your support truly matters. Let's continue growing this channel together. Thank you. Now, let's get into the story. I'm using a throwaway account for obvious reasons, with some personal details changed for privacy. I'm Sarah, 38, and I need to talk about something that's weighed on me for years. You know those family dynamics where one child can do no wrong and the other seems almost invisible? That was my reality. At Thanksgiving, my sister found out I had $12 million, and my family insisted I give it to her because they believed she deserved it more. Hello everyone. Before today's video begins, I need a quick favor. We've noticed the channel slowing down a bit, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's fast, free, and helps us keep producing strong content. Your support truly matters. Let's continue growing this channel together. Thank you. Now, let's get into the story. I'm using a throwaway account for obvious reasons, with some personal details changed for privacy. I'm Sarah, 38, and I need to talk about something that's weighed on me for years. You know those family dynamics where one child can do no wrong and the other seems almost invisible? That was my reality. Everything was normal until I turned 8. I was an only child then, and while my parents weren't overly affectionate, they were at least present. Mom helped with homework, and Dad occasionally took me fishing on Lake St. Clair. We weren't the perfect family, but we were okay. Then everything shifted one night. Aunt Kelly arrived at 2 a.m. and told me to pack a bag because Mom was in the hospital. My sister Rachel was being born early, 2 months early. The weeks that followed were filled with hospital visits and whispered conversations. Rachel was tiny, like one of my dolls, but tangled in tubes and wires. I wasn't allowed to touch her or get close. That was the first time I felt a barrier form between me and the rest of my family. When Rachel finally came home, our house became a sanitized bubble. Mom developed an intense fear of germs, industrial cleaners, sanitizer stations in every room, constant disinfecting. The smell of bleach still sticks with me, but the hardest part came next. Anytime I showed the slightest sign of illness, I was sent away to Grandma Marie or Aunt Kelly's. One sneeze meant packing a bag. A mild cough meant staying with Grandma. At first, it felt fun. Grandma made cookies, and Aunt Kelly had a huge Nancy Drew collection. But kids catch on. I eventually realized I wasn't being treated to special visits. I was being managed like a threat, as if my presence could harm Rachel. I tried earning attention in healthier ways. Straight A's got no reaction. Mom barely looked up from Rachel's medical notes. Winning first place at the science fair earned Dad's only comment, asking me to store my display board in the garage because Rachel was allergic to cardboard dust, if that's even real. The moment that stung the most happened when I was 12. I had been practicing for months to play bridge over troubled water in the school talent show. But Rachel had a 99.1 degree Fahrenheit fever that night, barely anything, and no one came to watch me perform. 2 weeks later, the entire extended family attended Rachel's 15-minute flute recital, where she struggled through hot cross buns. Rachel learned quickly how to use the system. By age 7, she was completely healthy, but she continued the routine. a headache meant staying home. Tired meant someone else doing her chores. And if she was stressed, Mom would call the school to move deadlines. I spent more and more time in my room, reading about art history and antiques. My room became my safe place, mainly because Rachel claimed to be allergic to my lavender air freshener, which kept her out. Strangely, I felt relief whenever she faked being sick. Those were the times I got sent to Grandma's, where someone showed interest in me. Grandma sparked my love of vintage jewelry. She let me organize her costume pieces, something I didn't realize was foreshadowing. What hurt the most wasn't just the favoritism, it was how my parents rewrote everything to justify it. Rachel needs more care because she had a hard start. Sarah is so independent. Sarah understands her sister's special needs. None of it was true. I was a child, trying to understand why being healthy made me less worthy of attention. Looking back, those years shaped me. Feeling like I was unsafe or inconvenient doesn't fade easily. But the upside is that I learned self-reliance. When no one checks your homework or acknowledges your wins, you become your own support system. High school was simply my way out. While Rachel built her little drama world in middle school, I focused on creating a future. Sorting Grandma's jewelry had taught me the value of organization, and I applied it everywhere. Color-coded notes, structured study schedules, everything in place. Rachel mocked me, calling me Rain Man. The benefit of being invisible is that no one tracks your successes or failures. So I did everything I wanted. I joined every club that didn't conflict with my job at Carson's Diner. Shout out to Carol, the owner, who remembered my birthday when my parents didn't. Debate team? Check. National Honor Society president? Check. Editor-in-chief of the school newspaper? Also check. Debate is where I found confidence. There's something incredibly satisfying about calmly dismantling someone's argument. It also taught me negotiation skills I didn't realize would matter later. I won the state competition twice. My parents missed both events because Rachel had soccer games. She was on the C team and didn't even play. Junior year got interesting. I took the SAT and scored a perfect 1600. Fewer than 1% of students achieve that. I stared at the screen for 20 minutes, convinced it was a mistake. When I rushed home to tell my parents, Mom was helping Rachel with homework. I told her, "Mom, I got a perfect SAT score." Her response? "That's nice, honey. Keep your voice down. Rachel's studying." Rachel chimed in, "Some of us actually have to work to get good grades." Mom assured her she was just a different kind of learner. Those SAT results never made it to the fridge. Rachel's C+ in English did, complete with a "We're so proud of you" magnet. College applications were another solo project. I applied to 15 schools. I wrote every essay, collected recommendations, and completed financial aid forms myself. Mr. Chen, my guidance counselor, was the real MVP. He stayed after school to help me when my parents were too busy. Acceptance letters poured in. Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Michigan, all with scholarship offers. I hid them in a locked box under my bed. If Rachel found them, she'd make it about her. If Sarah goes far away, I'll be alone. When I received my full ride to Michigan, Rachel made JV cheerleading. Guess which one the family celebrated? They went to Olive Garden. I had microwave mac and cheese alone. But that scholarship was freedom. Tuition, room, board, and books included. The day the acceptance package arrived, I went to my favorite window seat at the library and cried. Not from sadness, but relief. When I told my parents, they were upset. "Michigan, that's far. What if Rachel needs you? We can't help with expenses. Cheer competitions are pricey. Rachel actually cheered when I announced it because she wanted my bedroom for TikTok videos. That summer, I worked double shifts at Carson's. Carol made sure I never went home hungry and slipped me extra tips. Then everything changed. I got an entry-level job at Everett & Phillips Auction House in Detroit. I won't use the real name, but people in the field would recognize it. It's a reputable, high-end place. I started in estate sales, documenting items from wealthy clients. Not glamorous, but it paid the bills. The breakthrough happened a few months in. The Kingston estate came in. Mrs. Kingston had passed away without children and left a massive collection of what everyone assumed was costume jewelry. That's where Grandma's lessons helped. While sorting through the pieces, I found an Art Deco brooch. It was simple, but felt off. Too heavy, too well made. I spent my entire lunch break researching it, then stayed late to use the company's antique jewelry databases. The more I searched, the more convinced I became that it was real, not costume. But I was the new hire. Walking in claiming we had a valuable piece would have sounded ridiculous. So I built a thorough argument. 2 weeks of research, comparisons, and even a paid online gemology course from my tiny savings. When I finally approached my boss, Mr. Harrison, with my findings, he barely looked up from his phone. "We already labeled those as costume pieces," he said. I showed him the maker marks, perfect matches to Cartier's 1925 signatures. That got his attention. 1925 signatures. Harrison finally looked up and asked, "Where did you learn all this?" I told him, "I just did some research." The supposed costume brooch sold for $47,000 at auction. It turned out to be part of a limited collection made for a European client in the 1920s. The real impact, though, was that Harrison began trusting me. He started assigning me more authentication work. My childhood hobby of sorting Grandma Marie's jewelry suddenly had real value. I committed myself to learning everything I could about vintage pieces. I took every online class I could afford, spent weekends at estate sales studying items, and kept a small notebook documenting various authentication techniques. My apartment gradually turned into a jewelry research space, filled with printouts of hallmarks and certification guidelines. The auction house began seeing strong results. I was identifying valuable items that others missed, making connections with collectors, and learning the market inside and out. My commission checks increased, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't just scraping by. I was actually saving money. My family still showed very little. About 2 years into my job, the Rothschild estate came in. It was a major old money collection, and the industry was buzzing about it. I helped catalog their jewelry, and that's when I spotted a piece everyone else had dismissed. It looked ordinary, but I spent 3 days studying it with almost no sleep. It turned out to be from a famous French jeweler, part of a private collection believed lost during World War II. It sold at auction for $238,000. Harrison called me into his office afterward. I assumed he was promoting me. Instead, he said, "Sarah, you're wasting your talent here. You should be running your own authentication business." I brushed it aside at first. How could I start a business with no money? But the idea stayed with me. I began taking small freelance authentication jobs. Word spread quickly that I had a strong eye for detail. Private collectors started contacting me directly. One night, while sitting in my small apartment surrounded by reference books and tools, it finally clicked. I could actually build this on my own. So I did the only thing that made sense to me at the time. I took out a large loan against my car. I emptied my savings. I rented a tiny office space in a rough part of town. Everyone thought I had lost my mind, and maybe they were right. I converted a storage room above a Chinese restaurant into my workspace. It was the size of a college dorm room. Always smelled like Kung Pao chicken, and the Wi-Fi only worked if I sat in a specific corner. But it was mine. The first few months were both intense and frightening. I woke up at 4 a.m. worrying about bills. Loan payments felt crushing. My furniture was a folding table from Goodwill and a chair I found on the curb, which I cleaned thoroughly. But in the jewelry world, reputation and contacts matter more than anything, and my auction house experience gave me both. I started small, offering authentication services to local antique dealers. My rates were lower than major firms, but my thoroughness got people talking. Word spread. 6 months later, I had a turning point. A dealer I knew from the auction house contacted me about a Victorian brooch collection. The owner wanted confirmation before selling. It was a massive set spanning multiple generations. I spent 2 weeks on it, barely sleeping, documenting everything carefully. I discovered 2 extremely rare pieces that had previously been mistaken for later replicas. The owner was thrilled. She paid my fee and offered me a 10% commission when the item sold. That commission totaled $86,000, more than I had earned in the previous 2 years combined. After that, everything accelerated. Private collectors reached out. Estate lawyers asked for consultations. Even my old auction house sent me authentication jobs. I'm pretty sure Harrison was quietly recommending me. Within 2 years, I hired my first employee, Jenny, a new gemology graduate who reminded me a lot of myself when I was younger. Smart, reserved, and previously overlooked. She is now my head of authentication and incredibly valuable. The business expanded far faster than I expected. We moved into a proper office downtown. Goodbye constant Kung Pao smell, and built a skilled team. I developed a reputation for finding misidentified pieces. You'd be surprised how often significant historical items sit in attics labeled as costume jewelry. Success also came with complications. The more the business grew, the harder it became to hide it from my family. They still believed I worked at an antique shop. Rachel continued her sarcastic remarks during dinners. "Sarah, I have some old jewelry I was going to donate to Goodwill. Maybe your little shop wants it." Meanwhile, earlier that same morning, I had authenticated a $1.2 million Fabergé item. "Sure, I'll look into it." Mom continued introducing me to everyone as my other daughter. She works with old jewelry or something. While I had just been quoted in Forbes under my company's name and we had recently opened our 3rd office. Keeping the secret almost became entertaining, like an inside joke with myself. I'd sit at Sunday dinner in what looked like a Target sale outfit, actually Chanel, listening to Rachel brag about her entry-level marketing job. Knowing I had closed a deal that exceeded her yearly salary, I even started playing small games with myself, like wearing authentic Harry Winston pieces to family gatherings, and seeing if anyone noticed. They never did. Rachel once spent 20 minutes showing off her luxury $200 Michael Kors watch. I was wearing a vintage Patek Philippe worth more than her car. The real challenge became managing growth. By year 5, we had offices in Detroit, Chicago, and New York. I spent more time on planes than in my own bed. We became known for discretion. Wealthy clients often want their jewelry verified quietly. The money was substantial, and we eventually hired a full team of financial advisors. Despite that, I kept a modest personal lifestyle. I bought a nice but not flashy home in a desirable area and drove a high-end but low-profile car. The only place I splurged was my home office, advanced authentication equipment, top-level security, and a custom-built vault that could impress Fort Knox. The irony was that my family assumed I was living frugally to help them. Mom would say things like, "It's so sweet of Sarah to help. She must be living on ramen." Meanwhile, I had just authenticated a collection that earned me a commission larger than their mortgage. Success is strange because the more you achieve, the harder it becomes for people who've always seen you as lesser to understand it. It's like describing color to someone who has only known black and white. They simply don't have the context. By then, my company dominated the Midwest's high-end jewelry authentication market. Our reputation was solid. Yet every Sunday, I still drove to my parents' house, playing the role of Sarah, the modest antique shop employee. The contrast was ridiculous. I'd spend the morning on conference calls with collectors in Dubai, the afternoon authenticating million-dollar pieces, and the evening eating overcooked pot roast while Rachel dominated conversations with stories about her so-called marketing successes, usually things like delivering coffee to her boss without spilling it. One Sunday stands out clearly. I had just completed a major deal authenticating a long, missing Cartier piece that had been sitting in a safe deposit box for 40 years. The commission was in the 7 figures. I drove straight from the meeting to my parents' place, still energized from the success. Mom asked, "Sarah, honey, is everything okay? Your clothes look a little worn." I said, "Oh, just trying to save money," while wearing a $3,000 cashmere sweater chosen for how plain it looked. Rachel jumped in with, "Well, if you'd gotten a real job instead of playing with old jewelry." Dad cut her off saying, "Rachel, be nice. Not everyone can be as successful as you." I nearly laughed into my dinner. Around this time, I began the anonymous transfers. Aunt Kelly told me my parents were having trouble paying Rachel's student loans and medical bills. Mom casually mentioned they might have to sell the house. I couldn't let that happen. It was still my childhood home, so I started sending them $5,000 a month anonymously. When asked, I claimed I was surviving on rice and beans and giving them $1,000. And they assumed the rest came from Aunt Kelly or other relatives. Rachel immediately took credit, saying she inspired the rest of the family to help. Watching Rachel spend my money was something. The funds helped, but they also created odd side effects. My parents treated me like a noble, financially struggling daughter, making sacrifices for the family. Meanwhile, Rachel's spending skyrocketed. She'd arrive at dinner with designer bags she insisted were outlet finds. They weren't. I can identify authentic Gucci from a mile away. She started going on expensive vacations and posting about her blessed life. I'm convinced she used my support money for shopping. I stayed quiet. The irony was genuine, only the best for the golden child. Mom called me crying about the cost. I suggested Rachel consider a state school with strong programs. Mom replied, "Oh, honey, you don't understand. Your sister needs to maintain certain standards. But since we're on the topic, could you increase your monthly help for a few years?" I raised it to $7,000 a month. It barely affected my accounts, but hearing them praise Rachel for taking charge of her education, while assuming I was living off cheap food to help them, stung a bit. The kicker? I was giving a guest seminar at the very business school Rachel wanted to attend. The dean had personally invited me to lecture on luxury goods authentication and business scaling. I had to come up with an excuse to avoid Sunday dinner that week. My life started to feel like a double identity, running a multi-million-dollar business by day, then pretending to be the struggling, overlooked daughter on Sunday nights. But turning point arrived at Thanksgiving. The weight of the lie was getting heavy. Rachel continued making snide comments about my career. Mom apologized to her friends for my simple lifestyle. Dad kept suggesting I find a real job. I knew it would unravel eventually, just not the way it did. It started 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. Mom called, crying about her back pain. She'd been diagnosed with a herniated disc and couldn't handle cooking for 20 guests. I'd like to say I offered to help solely out of kindness, but honestly, I was tired of pretending her dried turkey was edible. I said, "Why don't I handle the food this year? I can have it catered." She said, "Oh honey, we can't afford a caterer." I replied, "Don't worry, I've saved up." She asked if I was taking out a loan. I arranged everything through a high-end catering firm I use for business events. Their food is the kind that makes you question why you ever cook. The cost was more than my parents thought I earned in 2 months, but it didn't matter. Thanksgiving morning, I was in good spirits. I brought my laptop because I needed to monitor a major Hong Kong auction. An incredible Art Nouveau necklace was up for sale, and a client wanted it authenticated if they won. The lunch arrived on time, and everything looked exceptional. Rachel, of course, had comments. "Store-bought stuffing? Really, Sarah? Mom's is so much better." This from the person who once set off the smoke alarm making toast. Mom apologized to guests for not cooking, but everyone clearly enjoyed the meal. Rachel stopped talking after trying the maple-glazed Brussels sprouts, which cost more per plate than her weekly grocery budget. I stepped away from dinner and dessert to check my laptop. The auction was getting interesting, and I needed to be ready in case my client won. I set up in my old bedroom, which Mom had kept exactly the same since high school. Meanwhile, Rachel's room had gone through 3 renovations. That's when everything went sideways. I had left my authentication software open, along with tabs showing various accounts and active contracts. Rachel walked in without knocking, something she has always done, to borrow my phone charger. She saw the screen and realized she had an opportunity to embarrass me in front of everyone. Rachel smirked. "Let's show everyone what Sarah's really been doing." Before I could stop her, she grabbed my laptop and marched into the dining room. There were about 20 people there, aunts, uncles, cousins, and my parents, well fed on gourmet turkey and a bit tipsy on expensive wine they assumed was from Trader Joe's. Rachel announced, "Time to see what important work Sarah's doing on Thanksgiving," and flipped the laptop around dramatically, expecting to humiliate me with what she assumed was some tiny antique sale. The room fell silent. You could practically hear the decorative clock ticking. Mom thought I bought it from a hobby store. It was actually an authentic vintage piece. On the screen, current account balance, $12.4 million. Pending authentication contract, $485,000. Recent transaction, $1.2 million. Hong Kong auction updates. Company quarterly profit report, $4.2 million. Rachel's face ran through several emotions before landing on pure disbelief. She actually swayed a little. "This can't be real," she whispered. Mom asked, "Rachel, what is it?" And Rachel, voice shaking, said, She's rich. Sarah's rich." The room somehow got even quieter. Then Mom started laughing, real out loud laughing. "Don't be ridiculous," she said. "Sarah works at that little antique shop." I stood up, smoothing the basic-looking cashmere sweater that cost more than their monthly mortgage. "Yes, Mom, I actually own one of the largest jewelry authentication companies in the country. Those antique shop comments? I authenticate multi-million-dollar pieces. That little business you never asked about has offices in 3 cities." Dad choked on his drink. Aunt Kelly dropped her fork. My uncle started coughing. Mom's laughter changed instantly. Her face went red, then purple. She jumped to her feet and shouted, "You have millions and you let us struggle?" I said, "Struggle? I send you $7,000 every month." "And you're sitting on millions?" she yelled. "Your sister has student loans. So instead of 'I'm proud of you,' I got outraged that I hadn't given them more." Rachel burst into tears, claiming I betrayed the family by hiding everything. Dad added, "How could you be so selfish? We're your parents. We raised you." That's when I snapped. Decades of being brushed off, overlooked, ignored, it all came out. Raised me? You shipped me to grandma's every time I sneezed. You missed every achievement because Rachel might feel left out. You never saved anything for my education, but took out loans for hers. And now you're angry that I built something for myself? The next 5 minutes were chaos. Mom yelling about family obligations, Dad shouting about ungrateful children. Rachel alternating between crying and demanding to know exactly how much money I had. Meanwhile, the catering staff awkwardly tried to serve dessert. I grabbed my laptop, picked up my Hermes bag, which Mom once complimented as a nice replica, and left. As I walked out, I heard Mom discussing how they'd spend my money. Rachel's MBA, a new car, a bigger house. Driving home in my modest car, a limited edition BMW, my phone began exploding with notifications. Texts, missed calls, group chat messages. Rachel started posting on Facebook about hidden family wealth and selfish siblings. The days after Thanksgiving were like watching a slow-motion disaster, except my family was the storm and my peace of mind was the wreckage. My messages filled up fast. Within an hour, I had 47 missed calls and over 200 texts. Mom's messages progressed like this: "I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request. I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request. I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request." Uncle Bob emailed about the responsibility of sharing wealth. Someone I barely knew somehow found my number to give her opinion. The real chaos started when they showed up at my workplace. Mom, Dad, and Rachel sat in the reception area Monday morning, claiming they had an authentication appointment. Rachel held her Michael Kors bag like it was priceless. My mother said, "We've discussed it as a family." A family discussion without the family member you're discussing? I asked. Mom ignored that. "We think it's only fair that you set up trust funds for everyone." Rachel added, "I need at least $2 million to start my new life properly." Dad said, "And your mother and I would like to retire. We're thinking a beach house in Florida." I said, "Did you forget I've been sending you $7,000 every month?" Rachel replied, "That's nothing compared to what you have. You owe us." "Owe you for what?" I asked. Years of being ignored? Missed graduations? Constant comparisons? Mom snapped. "Don't be dramatic, Sarah. We gave you everything." "No," I said. "I gave myself everything, and I'm done." Right there in the lobby, I pulled out my phone and canceled the monthly transfers. Mom gasped. Rachel attempted to cry again, then realized it wasn't working. When they refused to leave, security had to escort them out. Watching my 60-year-old mother being carried out while shouting about ungrateful children was surreal. Jenny asked if I wanted to press charges. I said no, but I did add them to the building's Do Not Admit list. The harassment continued. New numbers, fake emails, even trying to contact me through customer service. I finally had my lawyer send a legal notice threatening harassment charges. Mom then tried her last strategy, calling Grandma Marie. But Grandma is wiser than all of them combined. She simply said, "Good for Sarah. About time someone succeeded on their own." Mom didn't speak to her for 2 months. It has now been 6 months since Thanksgiving. I moved to a new home with better security and changed all my numbers. My company is thriving. Ironically, the family drama attracted several high-profile clients who appreciated my professionalism with confidentiality issues. Rachel continues posting passive-aggressive notes online about toxic wealth and family betrayal. I heard she's trying to start her own jewelry authentication business. Good luck with that. Mom and Dad eventually stopped contacting me after another letter from my lawyer explained how harassment charges could affect them. Now they tell people they never wanted my money and that they're praying for me. But the truth? For the first time in my life, I feel free. No more Sunday dinners full of subtle insults. No more minimizing my achievements to protect their feelings. No more funding the Rachel Show. My therapist says I'm finally setting healthy boundaries. I say I'm finally living a genuine life. That's my story, Reddit. Thanks for letting me share it. Special thanks to the catering company. They sent a Christmas card saying Thanksgiving at my parents' house was the highlight of their year. Edit. Responses to common questions. Yes, I'm still in therapy. No, I don't regret cutting them off. Yes, Grandma Marie is doing well. She's visiting next month to help me catalog a new collection. One last thing. Rachel, I know you're probably reading this. That Cartier bracelet in your latest Instagram post? Definitely fake. Just saying. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do, and hit the notification bell to keep up with more real-life stories happening around you.